In 1994, a man named G. Edward Griffin published a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island, and in it he exposed the Federal Reserve, proving that it's actually not a government agency, it's a private banking cartel built in secret by the richest men on Earth on a private island in 1910. And since then, everything he warned about has been playing out exactly as he predicted. The wars, inflation, and constant transfer of wealth from your pocket over to the elites. That book has sold millions of copies and it's been out for over 30 years. But right now, in 2026, we are living inside of the final chapter. So in this video, I'm going to show you the secret meeting that started all of it, how the system was designed to fund wars and steal your purchasing power without you ever knowing it, and why the people who built the system are now trying to crash it to replace it with something even crazier. So like this video if you're ready, and drop the word reset in the comments if you're watching this on Instagram to get the full deep dive documentary about the Great Reset and the New World Order that the elites are planning sent straight to your DMs. Let's run it. All right, bull runners, welcome back to the channel. So before I show you what happened on Jekyll Island, you need to understand why it happened. Because before the Federal Reserve, America had thousands of small private banks. They were everywhere, and a lot of them failed, which is why some people said that the Fed was needed, but that was just what the history books say. When you dig a little bit deeper, you realize that's not the full truth. So listen to this, because the government made it illegal for banks to open branches across state lines. So every bank was tiny, they were local, and most of their loans went to farmers who borrowed in the spring and paid back after harvest. Now, think about that. If you're a small local bank and you've lent everything to farmers and then you get a drought, well, they can't repay and you go bust. And that's what happened all the time, not because of the free market, but because of government policy that made banks artificially fragile. And the fix was obvious: let the banks branch across the country to spread the risk. But that's not what happened. Instead, they created the Federal Reserve in 1913 and promised it would stabilize the entire system and protect the banks and the people. But it didn't, because when the Great Depression hit in 1929, there were about 9,000 US banks that failed, and the Fed, which was meant to be the solution to the banking problem, had already been in place for about 16 years. And can you guess how many banks failed over in Canada? 0. And they didn't even have a central bank until 1935. They still had the same system of private banks that America said didn't work. And the reason it worked for Canada is because they let their banks go nationwide. So the Federal Reserve didn't fix the problem, and they knew this, but this was never about protecting the people's money. It was a cover story for something much deeper. And to understand what that really was, you have to go back to a private island off the coast of Georgia. Because in November of 1910, Nelson Aldrich, who was chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, business partners with JP Morgan and father-in-law to John D. Rockefeller Jr., sends out a secret invitation to the most powerful bankers in America saying, board my private train at the station in New Jersey, use a fake name, don't tell anyone who you are. Dress like a duck hunter so the reporters don't recognize you, and one by one, they showed up. Frank Vanderklipp, president of what's now Citibank, there to represent the Rockefellers. 3 JP Morgan men, his senior partner, bank president, and the head of his trust company, and Paul Warburg, a European banker representing the Rothschild dynasty in England and over in France. So this wasn't just an American money here, it was global money. And not even the servants on the train knew who these men were because they used first names only for the entire trip. Their collected wealth of all of these guys was said to be around 1/4 of the entire world's wealth, all on a private island, all in secret. Kind of crazy how everything happens on private islands, especially after the Epstein news. But they were designing the system that controls your money right now. They spent 9 days on the island drafting what became the Federal Reserve Act. That was pushed through Congress on December 23rd of 1913, 2 days before Christmas, when most of Congress had already gone home. and Woodrow Wilson signed it into law, the same president who gave us the income tax and the same president who dragged America into World War I and resegregated the federal government. So what did they actually build on that island, and why is it more relevant today than ever before for you to understand this, to know what's happening right now in the crypto market and to your money? Because most just see it as the Federal Reserve we know today, but G. Edward Griffin didn't see it like that. He said the Federal Reserve is not federal, there is no reserves, and it's not even really a bank. It's more like a cartel that the banks own shares in, where they bail each other out through it, and they make the rules for their own industry. And if you don't follow those rules, you go to prison. So it looks like a government agency, but underneath, it's the biggest financial cartel in history. And this is because they create money from nothing. The government needs money, so it borrows from the Fed. The Fed creates that money out of thin air, but it charges interest on that income. And to pay the interest, the government borrows more, and every single dollar in circulation was born as a debt with interest attached to it. And if you've been watching this channel, you already know how fractional reserve banking works. I made a video covering that in detail, but the short version is your $1,000 deposited into a bank becomes roughly $10,000 in the system, all of it collecting interest on money that never existed through the fractional reserve banking system. And in March of 2020, the Fed dropped the bank reserve requirements to 0. So before they were required to maybe hold like 10%, now they're required to hold 0. So the machine doesn't even pretend to have limits anymore. And Griffin said it best: every time the dollar loses 1 unit of purchasing power, somebody else gains it. And nobody ever asks where it went. Well, it went to the cartel, the government, and the Federal Reserve. Since 1913, the dollar has lost 97% of its value. So $100 back then buys you $3.50 today. And that's not just inflation, that's a transfer of wealth running 24 hours a day for over 113 years. But the system wasn't just designed to print money, because before the Fed, if the government wanted to fight a war, well, it had to raise taxes. And when people see the tax bill, they obviously push back. Wars are expensive and they're unpopular when you know what you're paying for. But the Fed changed that, because now the government could borrow unlimited money from a machine that creates it out of thin air, and there's no tax vote, there's no public debate, and the cost gets hidden in inflation as your money quietly loses its value. And you never connect it to the war that caused it. The banks collect interest on the war bonds, and the defense contractors collect the spending. They get paid immediately. And if you pay for it slowly through your savings account having less purchasing power every single year, you don't notice it until it's too late. And we first saw this 7 months after the Fed was created, because that's when World War I started, coincidentally enough. The system got its first real test. The Fed lent to the banks at below market rates, specifically when those loans were used to buy war bonds, and the money supply grew 70%. Inflation went from 1% upwards of 20%, and $17 billion in war bonds were sold. 2/3 of the entire war was funded by money created from nothing. And before 1913, the war would have been a lot harder to fund. But after the Fed was created on Jackal Island in 1913, they could just turn the printer on. But even with the Fed, there was still one limit. The dollar was backed by gold, which meant they could only print so much. So in 1933, Roosevelt took the dollar off the gold standard. And in World War II, it was the same Fed system, but with no gold limit. So the money supply doubled, and the inflation after the war hit 17.6%. And after 2 world wars, they took the model global, because in 1944, 44 countries met at the Bretton Woods to create the World Bank. So they tried to take the Jekyll Island model to the whole world with the exact same playbook: lend to countries that can't repay, trap them in debt, and use that debt to control them. And in 1971, they cut the very last link to gold in the international system by removing the dollar from the gold standard again. And from that point on, nothing backed your money or the loans to other countries except a promise. And the printer has been running nonstop ever since. Now, A general by the name of Smedley Butler wrote in 1935 that war is a racket. It always has been. It is the only one in which the profits are reckoned in dollars, in losses, in lives. That was 91 years ago, and nothing has changed since then. Because right now in April of 2026, the system built on Jackal Island is funding another war. $45 billion spent on Iran. $1 billion a day. Oil up well over 50%. The Strait of Hormuz closed. 20% of the world's oil cut off. And look at who's winning while you're paying more for gas. The Pentagon just requested another $200 billion. Defense contractors are seeing their stock prices hit all-time highs, and the mega banks are collecting billions in guaranteed interest on the new debt created to fund it all. And all this money comes from the exact same system made on Jekyll Island that prints money out of thin air, where the big banks collect interest and you pay for it through the hidden tax of inflation every single time you swipe your card at the store. But here's the part they never tell you in the history books. If you're a business owner, you aren't just paying that hidden tax through inflation, you're being hit twice, because while the Fed cartel is debasing the currency, the big payment rails like Visa and MasterCard are gatekeeping your daily revenue. They take their swipe fees off the top, and then they hold your funds for 3 to 5 days so that they can earn yield on your money, and they hit you with unnecessary declines that kill your conversion rates with high fees and slow processing time. It's the same Jekyll Island playbook, just modernized for your checkout page. They want a widespread, slow payouts, and total control over your cash flow. Now, I've been looking for a way to help the entrepreneurs in our community bypass this legacy cartel infrastructure, and I found a worldwide solution for the business owners watching this video. We've partnered with a massive global financial group that provides the heavy-duty processing power for some of the biggest names you know. We're talking about Spotify, companies like Cinnabon, Fly Dubai. Over 100,000 businesses have already locked arms with this global financial group, and they're the main sponsor for F4 racing in the UK and the United Arab Emirates. And they've built what I call a high-performance financial operating system. Now, this isn't just a credit card processing company. This is the same elite architecture used by multi-billion-dollar companies to protect their margins from the old guard banking rules. Now, here's how the infrastructure changes the game for your business completely. They have global orchestration, meaning you get banking and processing across 74 different countries in one dashboard. So no more being trapped by local banking laws or borders. They also have a crypto bridge where you can finally accept credit cards, ACH, and cryptocurrency all in one place. So no more shadow banning or jumping between 5 different apps just to see your daily revenue if you deal with crypto, or if you want to accept payments in crypto. That's massive. They also have multi-acquirer redundancy, because most businesses have a single point of failure. If your processor goes down, or if one of the merchants that you have goes down, your business dies. All of the best businesses that I've dealt with over the years, whether I've consulted them, I've been a part of their marketing team, or I've just been an affiliate of, they all have additional merchants in case one of them fails. So this system uses smart routing to ensure your transactions actually go through, reducing the risk of just having 1 or 2 merchants, and also reducing the hidden declines that cost companies like Spotify millions of dollars. And now you have access to the exact same tech. So if you're doing volume through your business right now and you're tired of the banks skimming your revenue and holding your funds for an extended period of time, you need to see the data for your business. I put a link in the description below to secure a deep dive strategy session, and all it's going to take is 10 minutes to get a diagnosis on your business, and their team will do a deep dive on your current setup for your business and show you exactly where your current merchant is leaking your profit and how to plug those holes with institutional grade infrastructure. Because once you secure the leaks in your business revenue, you have to realize that the cartel isn't just satisfied with taking a percentage of your sales. They're running the engine so hot that the entire system has to crash. So the game, it's been rigged for over 113 years. They create the crisis, they profit from the solution, and you pay the invisible bill through high inflation, and businesses across the nation, across the globe, eat the cost through high merchant processing fees. But This goes deeper than just funding wars and creating money out of thin air to devalue the dollar, because Edward Griffin says they're running the engine so hot that the system has to crash, and they're doing it on purpose because they already have the replacement waiting. And they've talked about this through CBDCs, or central banking digital currencies, programmable currency that the government controls. So they can track every single transaction, and they can freeze your account if you step out of line, and they get to decide what you're allowed to buy, and even program the money itself to expire if you don't spend it fast enough. The playbook is exactly the same as 1913, but updated for the modern economy. Create a crisis, let the system collapse, blame the war, blame the economy, and when people are desperate enough, they'll accept anything as a solution. Total surveillance, total control, that's their endgame. But you're probably thinking, if CBDCs become true, well, won't the elite want total control and crush crypto too? And honestly, 99% of the crypto market will likely go to zero, but they can't shut down everything because there's a few projects that have grown too big to kill. It's like the banks that are too big to fail, like JP Morgan, that gobble up all the smaller banks. Meaning there's going to be certain cryptocurrency projects that are going to gobble up the liquidity and the market cap of a lot of the other smaller projects. The ones that have built massive loyal communities that will not back down. And more importantly, they're becoming so deeply integrated into the financial system of the future that the elites literally can't pull the plug if they tried. For example, look at Ripple and XRP. The government fought Ripple in courts for years, trying to crush it, trying to pull the plug, but they failed. So now the system is being forced to accept them, and the SEC classified XRP as a digital commodity. Spot ETFs are live and absorbing billions of dollars. Wall Street is moving in quietly behind the scenes while the price is going down because they couldn't beat XRP, so now they're integrating it. But the hard truth is that because of where we are right now in this cycle, just holding XRP, it's not enough anymore. Because if you're sitting on one, or let's say two altcoins, maybe you hold Solana, or maybe you hold Chainlink, or let's say you hold Bitcoin, XRP, Ethereum, the top three on an exchange, hoping that the number is just gonna go up, well, you're playing the old game through the old rules of just hodl and hold. But if you look at what the institutions are actually doing, they're not just holding, they're building an architecture that is going to work in the modern economy so they can control the yield, just like the banks do. They're moving assets into systems that generate yield every single day, no matter what the market does, whether it goes down, up, or ranges sideways. And that's the gap between what the institutions are doing and what you're doing. That's the gap that decides whether this wealth transfer works for you or works against you in the new modern economy. And that's why I built the Altcoin Pro Accelerator and assembled the smartest minds in crypto together, because inside the program, what we do is we build your SGS system from scratch, one-on-one over the course of 5 months, where we show you how to secure your crypto from the hacks, the scams, the rug pulls, the freezing of assets in case you step out of line and they don't like what you said on social media, or they implement any sort of social credit score system like what they did over in China. So that way you're secure from the new financial control system where the gates are closed and most of the world is trapped inside of the dome. We also show you how to grow your portfolio from passive yield through liquidity pools, staking, stablecoin strategies that institutions in the world's wealthiest private family offices are leveraging right now that 99% of the crypto market, let alone the world, do not know about. You can make money whether the market goes up, down, or sideways. And then we help you scale your portfolio by picking the right plays that could get the 5x, 10x, sometimes even 100x gains. Our team has called some of the most explosive projects throughout the last bull run. So if you want to get the full breakdown of how this works, then you can click the first link in the description, watch the free training that I put together for you. If it makes sense, book a call with me or one of my senior coaches, and our team will do a deep dive on your portfolio to figure out the leaks in that portion of your bucket. Because if you're a business owner, you need to figure out where the leaks are in your merchant processing, so that way you can have lower fees, faster processing time, the ability to accept crypto, being open in more countries, and then that way you have extra money back in your pocket that you can invest into the right projects that our team can help you identify. And as always, we don't give financial advice. These videos are purely for educational, informational purposes only. So you should always consult a financial advisor, consult your CPA. And if you don't have a CPA, we have qualified CPAs inside of our community that we'd be glad to connect you with. because I've been in crypto for nearly 10 years. And after understanding the broken system that got built on Jackal Island that has been taking your money for over 113 years, when we transition into this financial reset, you don't want to be caught on the wrong side. So make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay in the know and share this with a friend, because I'm going to go even deeper down the rabbit hole in my next video and you do not want to miss it. As always, I will see you at the top. You know what to do. Stay bullish.